Hello, everyone. Welcome to what I think is our fourth Magic Makers. I think I lose track. My name is Jenny Hawkyard, and I am an illustrator working in beautiful West Wales. So, if you don't know me, I have worked on 4 Oracle decks with Kyle Gray and Hay House over the last 5 or 6 years. And I also do intuitive artworks for people basically all over the world. And the reason why I started this Magic Makers series was because I realized as I was working with these individuals throughout the years that I was meeting wonderful people and learning about amazing healing modalities and intuitive workers and thinking, I wish I should be recording these conversations. They're so fascinating. And so that's what I started to do. I started to reach out to people one by one and say, hey, do you want to have a chat about your business and about your experience with spirituality and all that kind of stuff? So at the moment, I'm currently holding it monthly, and every month it's someone different, someone doing something different. And all the recordings are put up on YouTube about a week after we're done. So we have Aiden Hathaway here today, and give a little intro to yourself.
Oh, thank you. So I'm Aodaoin Hathaway. I'm living here in Ireland and I'm a spiritual teacher and energy healer. My specialty is working with dragons, though I also work with the divine feminine, angels, ascended masters, other divine aspects, my own divine aspects. And really, the focus of my work is supporting people to access their own gifts, their own magic. I believe we all bring our own unique light and magic to this world, and this world is in need of it. And sometimes, just because of this world, it's a little hard to access those gifts. It's a little hard to recognize our own wisdom, power, and light. And so that is my focus, and it's the focus of the dragons, is to support that, to support the embodiment of our light, our magic, our joy, our wisdom, our power, and allowing that to ripple out into our incarnated lives and into the world. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think we've ever touched on this, but I'm trying to remember whether we talked about this when we met first. But where did this all start for you? Where did it start with the dragons, or did it start somewhere else? This sort of journey of spirituality.
I suppose for me, the dragons have always been there. I just didn't have a word for what they were. I grew up in Catholic Ireland. I knew they weren't angels, but I wasn't sure what they were. And obviously, the representation of dragons in, especially like the Western culture at the time, would have been much more, I suppose, stereotypical, right? Of greedy, nasty energy. But they were always there. They were like my imaginary friends. And I think then probably at a certain point as a sensitive kid, I was very sensitive to energy. And I'm sure like many of us just had to shut that part down. There wasn't really a space at that time to talk about it there just wasn't the knowledge then that there is now, which is such a gift for the children being born today and our own kids. So I went through like a period of, I suppose, real disconnection from that spiritual aspect. And then when I was about 18, when I went to college, I there was a health food shop, and the lady in the health food shop was really interested in spirituality, and she had all these books that I had like no idea they even existed. Books. So I read Star Hooks, The Spiral Dance.
Oh.
And it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is me. This is all the questions that I had. So from that point on, I really started to explore the divine feminine, the goddess. Wiccan witchcraft was a big part of my journey at that point. And from there, becoming familiar with energy healing, which was for myself. It was not anything that I intended offering as a profession, but I did that energy healing and I found that the more that I was stepping into that path that felt so, I suppose, familiar to me, the more the dragons were showing up again. And this time I did have a word for what they were. So
So what did that look like for you?
initially it was in my own meditations or when I was doing healing sessions for myself. I did have a couple of healers say to me, I don't want to freak you out. Because at the time, angels were very socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Angels were very socially acceptable. Dragons a little were still a bit out there. And I had a few say to me, I don't want to freak you out, but I think I saw a dragon in your session. And so as I would sit with meditation, I started to connect again really to that aspect of myself. And the more I began to trust in that connection, the stronger it grew. And the more I found that they were just becoming a part of my everyday life. It wasn't really segregated off, I suppose. And I feel that probably because of my rebellion against Catholicism, against the Catholic Church. And I mean, of course, at the time in Ireland, a lot of the awful abuses were coming to light.
Mm.
So I was quite reactive against working with angels or working with Mother Mary or Jesus or the Magdalene. I went through a little period of being quite reactive against that. And in a way, the dragons gave me a safe place to be, a safe place to land, I suppose, for a little while, as well as the divine feminine,
Yeah.
and allowed me to really step into a world of spirituality that I had no idea existed growing up.
Yeah, and I suppose because it wasn't like angels so well known at that time, then in a sense it's your own. It feels personal to you, and you can grow within that and explore within that and not be like, oh well, that's just someone, that's what someone's put on to me, that's what someone's told me is right about, say, Archangel Michael or whatever. So there's kind of a level of autonomy when you're in that discovery phase, right?
Yes, there is. I mean, and honestly, I suppose I did learn the hard way. I did learn the hard way that some spiritual beings that show up are not who they say they are. And I think you and I have spoken about this before. I've said this quite a few times that at this point, dragons, unicorns, angels are some of the easiest beings to mimic because as humans, we have such a specific idea of what they should look like. The unicorn is prancy, the angel has wings, the dragon's, you know, Game of Thrones dragon, whatever it is. So I did learn the hard way on how, and at the beginning, I really was relying a lot on books and on my own intuitive wisdom. And when I moved to New York, suddenly there was, of course, this wide world of energy healing available to me,
Mm.
and a lot more wisdom and a lot more guidance and care available to me, which I hadn't had the benefit of. And so I started to learn about psychic protection, about energetic boundaries. And as I started to step into that space, the dragons would show me how to tweak things, how to, make a shield that would work because I mean, I loved Manhattan, but the energy was very intense. So that I would have a shield to walk through, to walk to work, or to be in that kind of very intense, jittery kind of energy and not burn out my system.
Yes.
So it was hit and miss for the early years. And it's something that I like to share with people now so they don't have to go through that kind of journey. But it is something that I'm glad I walked through, because if someone comes to me now and says, this happened to me and I feel so stupid, or I feel like whatever, I can say, it's okay. You know what? We're living in human bodies. We grow up with human conditioning. We're not taught these things, or very few of us are taught these things. it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to fail or whatever it is that your mind is telling you that you've done. And let's look at what's going on and let's do some clearing and some healing and set you up in a more empowered way so that you can recognize if that's going to happen again or you can avoid it altogether.
Yeah, and I think in a way, those of us that end up on this interesting path that we're on as healers or intuitives or channels or whatever you want to call it, we kind of have to go through that. We have to be go through the baptism of fire, I think,
Yeah.
in order to really have a strong sense of what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it. Again, it's that kind of autonomy of the journey that you're on, I think. And I've not really ever thought about it until just now about how so many times you're just bumbling along and then you're kind of going, oh, okay, that time that happened. And collecting information, and over time it becomes more refined. I don't know whether you found your practice over time has maybe it's always shifting and changing, or it's always slightly different with people. Do you find that?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And I think to go back to what you said, Jen, about our journey and kind of bumbling along, I think that certainly for me and maybe for you as well, there were times where I was very much looking for a guide. I was very much looking outside, saying, tell me how this works. Tell me, show me, how do I do this? How does this work? And I feel like that's part of the learning curve is that we maybe for a period of time hand our power over to somebody else.
Did you ever find that person?
No,
No.
well, I think there's probably a multitude of people out there. I mean, you and I have talked about this. There's a multitude of people out there who are willing to step into that role and say, "Do what I say, do what I do," and nothing else. And that's not really the kind of teacher that I feel is helpful,
Mhm.
except in maybe learning boundaries and learning to take back your power. I feel like each one of us has this unique journey, right? We have our, and I know the word like word journey is probably way overused at this point in the spiritual community and the wellness community, but we have our own path. We have a multitude of choices. We make loads of mistakes. We sometimes repeat those mistakes several times before we kind of acknowledge, oh, okay, I think I'm done with that now. But they're all unique to us. And I feel like it's very important to always see what resonates. And I think that's something that I come back to now, having done it lots of different ways. I come back to what resonates with me energetically. And I do that kind of check with everyone that I work with. And at this point, I have enough experience to know when something is aligned and when something is not. But
Yeah,
that's
I love that. I love
bumbling.
it is bumbling.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. And I think that is the path of whatever you want to call us, is that perhaps you're always going, because I've tried many different modalities, not only just through my personal life, but then also from meeting the people that I meet through my work. And you often hear people say, "Oh my God, this was amazing. I love Kundalini." And I go, "Oh, all right, I'll try it." And then I try it and I go, "You know what? That really didn't suit me. Didn't like how it felt." But that's not necessarily me writing it off forever. But at the moment, it didn't hit me. And then other times, connecting in with other energies, you find like, wow, there really was. And it's having that kind of sort of, whether it's an actual physical notebook or a mental notebook of like these things that help you on your path, and I suppose, what energies are there um, coming in, supporting you continuously. It sounds like the dragons were always there for you innately from the beginning, supporting you. And I've always I'm very easily connecting with the angelic energy. And so I did a channeled artwork. I've done several channeled artworks for Aiden, but I did one of a dragon for her very recently. And I felt quite nervous about it because it was my first sort of real official dragon for the dragon lady. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous, but we'll see what comes through. And the energy for me was very, I couldn't grasp it. It kept shifting and changing. And I was just like, where are you? You keep showing me something and then vanishing and showing me something else. And so when I presented with you with the artwork, I was like, I have no idea if this is going to hit or not.
And it was perfect. It was perfect. And this is it. I feel like, as I touched on, like people have the idea of what the dragon should look like. And in fact, a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't take that form at all. Their shape,
Yes.
light, their magic, in the same way as the angels.
Yes.
Right? The dragons and the angels, they're very similar in vibration. The angelic realm and the dragon realm, very close together. I suppose the difference I have seen with them is in their roles of service, right? The dragons tend to can deal with a denser energy than the angels, but maybe that's just a talent and a gift rather than a. I'm not saying that the angels couldn't, but just that maybe is how they divvied things up.
Well, that's so interesting you say that because I think I told you that I did a meditation with sort of dragon energy for myself, and I got this message that was very much we are like the dragons are more grounded in earthly densities, and so able to process these sort of connections between the ether and the earth and all that kind of stuff. And the angelic stuff is more not higher up. I don't want to put them on a pedestal or anything like that, but they are not enmeshed so much in the earthly densities as the dragons were. And I think that's what I was struggling to process when I was creating that artwork for you was seeing these images of this like dragon being a part of the earth, being vast and also small, and
Yeah.
trying to translate that into a 2D piece of artwork was just blowing my brains.
You did an amazing job. It was absolutely amazing. I mean, as soon as I saw it, I actually started crying. So it was like, this is what I see. This is what I see. And I suppose much like the angels, right? There are some angels that really are not that involved with us, with humans. The universe is vast and there are many universes. And it's the same with the dragons. I feel like that there is a particular group of dragons that are in service to Gaia and therefore willing to support us if we ask. But their ability to transmute that density without, I suppose, compromising their own energy is one of their gifts.
Right.
Kind of laser focus that they can do. And again, I'm not, this is, I really feel like it's kind of like how we might have favorite colors or exactly what you were talking about, like having a favorite modality that works or that doesn't. I feel there was probably some like divvying up that went on. I'll take this, I'll take this. I'm good at that. I'll do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Susanna asked a really interesting question, which I'm absolutely loving. She said, Could you kindly talk about the history path of the dragons for centuries connected to something wrong or evil in Western culture and the shift that we're seeing now with the new generations and movies with friendly dragons?" So it's something that's been in my mind too, how like the Eastern dragon has a very different historical lore behind it
Mhm.
and the Western dragon, doesn't it? Do you know anything about that?
My, and again, take what resonates here. My seeing on this and my conversations with them around it is that they're the dragon energy, whether obviously is very much differently represented in the East than in the West. And that's a wild generalization, but we'll just go with that, as Susanna had mentioned. It is all human projection,
Mhm.
okay? In the same way that we project that Archangel Michael has a specific look, okay? Right? So looking at that projection, if you look at the way the dragons were described, we even talk about still, I still hear that phrase, which always gives me the creeps, like slay your dragons and like
Yeah.
deal with your drama, deal with your stuff. But the dragons were greedy. They were powerful. They loved gold. They were frequently angry and warlike. Okay. So I think if you were to take those adjectives like just by themselves, humans are probably what you would come back with, right? Or
Yeah, you
certain
could apply
types.
that to Western colonial ideals.
Yeah.
You kind of, it's like a mirror, isn't it, of what
Yeah.
we collectively have done.
Yes. And I mean, this is not, and remember as well that the people that were writing down those stories were the people in power as
Mhm.
well. So we're looking at a very patriarchal colonial kind of mindset. For different reasons, the dragon became a symbol of luck, prosperity, wealth, good fortune in the East. And it was seen as a much more benevolent, still powerful being.
Mhm. Mhm.
My sense is that, and Susanna, again, this is just through conversations with my dragon guides. As humanity began to open up more to angels outside of specific religious connotations, okay? Because there are angels in all the religions, right? There are angelic beings represented in all the religions. In the same way that there are dragons represented in many cultures. The stories of dragons, giant monsters, lizards in all cultures. But as the angels began to move out of that religious context and began to be more, as I said before, socially acceptable, to be working with them energetically, to receiving their blessings, that you didn't have to kind of go through a medium of a priest or whatever it was. There was a shift in consciousness happening within the human collective, and that has been building. And it certainly, like here in Ireland, it was not seen as weird that you might believe in the fairies and also believe in the Catholic Church's version of God and all the rest of it, right? Those two beliefs could coexist.
Mhm.
And so that opening, that wisdom was always there, I think, within the collective energies. And I feel that in the last 20 years or so, we have seen a big shift in that human consciousness, a kind of reclaiming of a noticing again of all the vastness of support that we have. And as that is happening, the artists, the writers, the creative people are tapping in to that true dragon energy, right? Because it's exactly what you said. The new representation of these dragons is coming. Like when my son was born and he was old enough to be that I wanted to read him books and stuff, which was when he was very small, because I have always loved books. I really wanted to find some dragon books, like kids' books. But I went into that thinking I'm not going to find anything. There was nothing when I was small. And there were all of these kids' books with these adorable little dragons that were just so full of love. And I was like, all of these children's authors are tapping in to this energy. They're tapping into the true dragon energy. The dragons are connecting with them. They're bringing this through in this like creative collaboration. And it was transferring through even to young adult books because that was where there was an openness, I suppose, right? There was an openness within that creative community. Just like you talked about, Jen, about how like you sit to connect, you meditate, you tune in, you bring the wisps together and you weave it into something that is uniquely yours and beautiful, but also is this like magical collaboration. And so that is what started happening. They started to, in these little kids' books or whatever they were, started to earth in an opening for that human collective consciousness to start to come back or to remember
Mm.
what that true dragon energy is. And true dragon energy is unconditional love.
Mhm.
Just like with the angels, it's unconditional love. It's not what you see in Game of Thrones. They're not like weapons of war or retribution or power or whatever. They are beings, divine beings of unconditional love. And anything that they do for us is done from that place of unconditional love.
Mm. Mm. I love that. I hadn't thought about the books, but yeah, I've seen them myself and bought them for my niece and nephew. Yeah, that's really lovely actually to think how these things happen in the common culture slowly but surely. And I've seen it with other things too. I mean, for me, the movie Interstellar is one of my favorite movies. And every time I watch it, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much in this movie about time and how love transcends all dimensions. And so even whether the directors and composers and all that knew what they were doing, who knows? Regardless, the information is coming through. You don't always have to be reading these specific esoteric books that you and I probably have read, and it is kind of pervading through into the common culture slowly but surely. No, the Avatar movie would be another example of that. Maybe not so much the second one, but certainly the first one was an opportunity for people to see how perhaps galactic energies might be perceived as differently and how we could go down a different path. So Ollie asks an interesting question about circling back to when you were sort of seeking a mentor and perhaps heading down different paths. He asks, how did the dragons help you take back your power? What were key situations for you with them, if you're willing to share?
Well, I suppose it encompasses all different aspects because we're having the human incarnation. So every part of every aspect of our human life is important. And I think it took me a long time to really acknowledge that. I compartmentalized a lot of things for probably too long, but I think that's partly how we're trained to operate. For me, I suppose a big moment or I suppose a big series of key moments was when I had I struggled with we sorry, let me get my train of thought here. So I suppose as a mother of a young child and with two young stepchildren living in a country that I was far away from my family without a support system, I suppose I really kind of lost myself. I was really trying to be like the best mother, the best wife, the best stepmother. We had a lot of different stresses at the time in our lives. And I was very much in survival mode and really had lost myself. Like I wasn't meditating, I wasn't reading, I wasn't doing any healing practices. I just was surviving. And I was doing my best, but I was just surviving. And at that time, I really feel like that was kind of it was a very dark time for me. It was kind of rock bottom.
Mhm.
And not that I was fortunate that I had a great husband and the kids were healthy and all of that, but it was hard. I was like, who am I? Don't even know who I am anymore. I don't recognize this person in the mirror anymore. And I remember I was walking to work. It was like 5:30 in the morning. I was walking to work and I was really feeling sorry for myself. Like really, I was wallowing. Like I was
Mm.
like, my life is just so miserable and nothing. I was just having one of those stomping kind of walks. And I just felt like, do you know the way a cat will pick up a kitten and just kind of plunk them somewhere?
Yeah.
Like it's very abrupt, mostly. Like you're, hey, that's your baby. If you want to drop it a bit more lightly, that is what I felt energetically. Like I just felt this kind of shake of like, come on. And I was mad. I was angry. I was like, what do you want from me? I'm doing my best. I'm like holding it all together here. And they were like, yeah, but it's not working, is it? It's not working for you. So what are you going to do? And I was also mad. I was like, "Well, what are you gonna do? What do you" so I'm, like, walking along talking to myself like a crazy person. I haven't worked, but it kinda shook me out of it, and it reminded me it wasn't like this come to Jesus moment, like the stars didn't suddenly align, it wasn't like this beaming light. It really was like this gruff and sort of, "Come on, you can do better than
Pull
this."
yourself together. Yeah.
Yeah, pull yourself together, and that's yeah, like, it's the dragon energy is very practical.
Mm.
They are very practical, and I think that's what you were talking about, like, with that earthed energy. I think when we first start off on our, like, spiritual journeys, and we can get very excited, like, about past lives and Akashic records and galactic connection, what's my home star and what's my all of which are brilliant, beautiful pieces of information. There's wisdom in all of those things. But at the end of the day, you are still on this world having a human life. And it's to bring in all that wisdom and to bring in all that, to earth it in. And that's what I find like the dragons are really good about that. And that was, for me, that was probably like the heaviest time, the time where I really had to like, is like walking through Mordor. Really had to take full along. But there have been times since then, to a lesser extent, where I have had that little shake or strong nudge or a really kind of been poof into alignment to look at something that maybe I've been avoiding looking at. That there's been, which again, look, we all do, right? There's things we don't want to see until we're ready to see.
Well,
Uh,
and life just gradually slips, doesn't it? Your
yeah,
practices, if they help you, they slip because life gets busy and distracting, and then actually it's those times when you need them the most that we tend to unplug from them and go, oh, I don't have time for that. I'm guilty of it too. I tend to do a lot of connection work for clients and then forget to do it for myself. And then when I do it for myself, I have these mind-blowing experiences, probably because they've been waiting to, to tell me something. But also, it seems to be a very common thing to with people that I've spoken to. They have to hit rock bottom. You have to go through a sort of crucible of some sort in order to kind of really take hold of that thing that you're doing and start to accept it and work it. Did you find
yeah,
that was kind of the turning point for you?
yes.
Yeah.
That was a huge turning point for me. And as I say, there have been points since then. I would love, well, first of all, if anyone's watching this and you're in that rock bottom place, I'm here to say it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You're going to get through it. You're going to be amazing, right? It's because we have this support. We have this support in so many ways once we can let ourselves receive it. And it's, I feel that we can also make ourselves hit that point by not receiving the help. Like I love to work with clients before they hit that point because they don't have to. We, we heal best when we feel secure and safe. And sometimes, like for me, I had to hit that point. I had let it slide and let it slide and let it slide till I had to hit that point. I have never hit that point again.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I've never been back through Mordor, but I've
No.
had a few. I'm trying to think of a good Lord of the Rings analogy, but
Yeah.
I've had a few scrapes
Yeah.
since that I've been like,
Plenty of the
oh, I'm
tired
here.
moments.
I've seen Mordor from a distance and gone, no, I've been there. I don't
Yes.
need to do that.
Yeah.
Or yes, that this is tough, but I have different ways of dealing with it.
Exactly.
Um, and I suppose as you were saying earlier, it's not about trying to avoid these earthly experiences. That's why we're here, right? We chose to come here to experience all of the mess and all the good stuff. But I think as you go along, and certainly with your guides and dragons and angels, you can start to kind of go, ah, okay, right. I see this coming. Whatever, maybe it's family stuff or an ailing loved one, and you can kind of mentally prepare and also know that you've got a support system in place. I think when you hit that lowest point is when you feel at your most alone and isolated. And that's usually when something breaks through and you literally have a breakthrough moment and then it all shifts. So, yeah, I would echo what you said about if you are in that spot right now, to know that often that probably 6 months from this moment, your life will have massively changed towards the positive.
Yes. Yes. I mean, within 2 years, 3 years of that moment, we had completely changed our lives.
Wow.
We ended up moving back to Ireland. Things were weights were lifted across the board for the whole family. But even in the 6 months afterwards, you're absolutely right. In the 6 months after that, I started to meditate again. I started to do my practices. I we had very little money at the time. I couldn't do trainings or stuff the way I had when I was living my life in New York, but I still had all those tools, and I still had my books and my I had some crystals left, and it was to start to reclaim that part of myself again and let her because actually that part of ourselves is so strong. And the reason that we feel so alone when we hit that rock bottom point is because we've cut that part off, because we've closed that part off. And that is, again, not something I have ever done since then.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Bravo.
Yes.
So, go into some depth, if you will, about now what does your work look like? You know, when someone approaches you and says, "Hey, I'm intrigued by dragons," what does a session look like with a one-to-one? How does that work?
It's interesting because, right, certainly in the last year or two, certainly this year, the year of the dragon, there's a lot more what I call like social media noise around dragons. So it's what I like to start off with is making sure that we're on the same page. And usually if someone's come to me through or the mouth or through the website, they have a pretty good idea of my energy, of the kind of work that I do, and that it is not I'm not going to sit there and talk to you about what color your dragon is and that kind of thing. I'm more about like why are you drawn to work with dragons? What support are you looking for right now? Why are you looking for their support? And the answer to that is always very insightful because if someone is looking to them to feel more powerful, then that is someone that I know I can support in stepping into their own power.
Mm.
And that the dragons will support that. I mean, there is an integrity that has to be there, that a responsibility and integrity that has to be there when someone comes to you and is vulnerable and open. And I'm sure you find this with your work too, right? You are seeing someone who's sharing a dream with you, who's sharing a hope with you, who's sharing a vision of some kind of magic in their life with you. And you honor that in your work. And it's the same for me. If someone is coming to work with me to receive, you know, I would say probably 60-70% of the work that I do with the dragons is clearing.
Mhm.
Because when you clear someone's field, everything that wasn't theirs, everything that was projected on them, all the mental thoughts, the conditioning, everything they were holding on to, that's gone,
Mm.
right? Suddenly they have some space. They have some space to be themselves. They have some space to feel what it is they want to feel or explore. And I follow that clearing up with a healing, and there's often some messages from the dragons for them. But the healing might be more around what is what becomes obvious once it's clear.
Yeah.
Right? Once there's not all those thoughts, all those worries, whatever the conditioning, the beliefs, then you can see, okay, where did that all start? Where can we help right now? Where can we support right now?
Do you find it's often a very simple nugget that comes through? That's actually very transformational for the individual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As humans, our minds are amazing things. They have the capacity to make everything so complicated, you know. And it's that's okay. That's what they do. They entertain us. We are entertained every day by our minds, by the drama that it thinks and the anxiety, the calamity, whatever, right? I mean, that's maybe entertained isn't quite the word. We're occupied, we're distracted.
Yeah.
So often it is quite a, I suppose, simple thing. It doesn't make it any less painful. It doesn't make it any less traumatic. It doesn't make it any less upsetting. But it's usually there's something at the core. That, and once you reach that core, once the layers, and sometimes it doesn't, obviously, it's not, doesn't necessarily happen all in one session. And I feel like that's, and I've been there myself, right? I'm sure you've done it too, right? Where we know something's up, and I'll go to, I have a few great friends who are healers, and I'll go and be like, could you just fix it? Just fix it. Just make it okay, fix it. I don't want to have to look at it. I don't want to have to deal with it. Just fix it. And of course, they can support, they can help in the same way that I can support and I can help, but ultimately, no one can fix somebody else, right? You have to be able to feel secure and safe enough to let something go, to allow the healing, to receive the support. And that may take some time. And I had someone say to me one time where I was giving out about like, oh, that I wanted to lose some weight. And my personal trainer said to me, he was like, you didn't put all this weight on in one go. He was very Irish, very to the point. He's like, you didn't put it all on in one go. You didn't put it all on in like 6 weeks. Why do you think it's all going to come off in 6 weeks? And it's the same sort of thing with when we're working with a conditioned belief system or a long running story in this incarnation that may have threads that go to other incarnations or maybe ancestral memory. We should give ourselves the grace to allow some time, because actually in each level of that healing there is wisdom. In each level of that healing there is grace, there is something to be learned, there's something to be seen, there's something to be loved. And often this maybe there's something to be forgiven in ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's
And as you say, if you were healed right away, the issue that you went to them for, it would be like losing the weight all of a sudden. Your body would have such a, it wouldn't be healthy, probably wouldn't be sustainable. Yeah, so on the energetic side, it would probably be so shocking that it's not going to actually support you to completely blow all these fragments away instantly.
right, because what can happen is if if that gets blasted away, right? First of all, that's an incredibly harsh energetic energy for most people.
Mhm.
Not appropriate for most people anyway. But when that happens, you don't have that space in this world, in this time, to actually process through and set up some new habits in your mental and emotional body. So even though the energetic core of the issue is gone, you will recreate the mental and emotional habits that went with that energetic pattern. It's one of the reasons why people say, "Oh, I've worked on this already. I've already worked on this." And I'll be like, "Okay, yeah, you have, but what did you do differently when you left? Did you make a conscious effort to start thinking differently? Did you make a conscious effort to start choosing differently? Or did you let the default patterns run?" Because I feel like we can, when we're in that place, we want a quick fix. It's why, look, I mean, how many social media ads do you scroll past every day saying seven-figure months in 10 days or whatever, right? Like it's the quick fix because we're afraid that what we're going to have to look at is going to be painful or it's going to hurt us again. And in fact, usually it's that fear that is worse than the actual.
Mm.
process.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're closing in on the top of the hour. I'm going to invite anyone who wants to ask any questions to please put them in the chat. But do you want to share some parts of your business that people might want to be involved with, or something new that you've got coming up? Uh,
Lovely, that'd be lovely. Yeah. So we every month we have a dragon temple, which is just it's a usually a live Zoom call. There's always a recording available. And different dragons come to our dragon temple space. It's an energy transmission. So it is a clearing, healing, it's a transmission. They always give me the theme. I just sort of put it out there. So that happens every month. Then there is actually starting, oh my goodness, the 9th of September
very
is the
soon.
Divine Dragon Energy Healing modality. The foundation level of that is a modality that I've brought through with the Divine Dragons. And it's really fun. It's not just for healers. It's not just for someone who wants to learn energy healing. It's very practical. There are practical applications for all of the energy tools that you learn. And then I'm also really excited about the Living Temple, which is starting in September, which is dragon led, divine feminine led, and it's going to be 13-week spiral, sacred spiral for really bringing in a healthy ecosystem for our lives. So I'm really looking forward to that one. That's the first time I'll be doing that one. And yeah, it's going to be fun next few weeks with all the new groups starting.
Yeah, that's a lot that you've got going on. So people can join on your website, which you've got listed in your speaker name here, and can also see the artwork that I've done for you on your website.
Yeah, all the artwork. So far, there will be more, I
There
hope.
will be more. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're probably, other than Kyle, you're probably one of the clients that I've worked with the most, which is really lovely because each connection just gets stronger and stronger. But yeah, the living temple artwork was a real, I think, a game changer for both of us in that regard about what came through with that.
Yes. Yeah, because I mean, that really, because we were talking about it, right? And then that, as soon as I saw the image, it's like that's the foundation for the new website. And then you stepped in to help with my octopus of a website.
Yeah. Yeah. So my past life, I worked as a web designer and graphic designer. That was my route into Mordor. So I do still dabble where possible. So yeah, it's always lovely to work with clients like yourself to because I can speak both languages. I can understand the intuitive side and the energy side, but then there's also that very logical
And
side
it
that
was
I end up
such a
tapping
gift.
into.
It was such a gift because I had just no, it had reached it had become like, I don't know, the Hydra something.
Yeah, not a good dragon.
No, not this has to get contained in a more reasonable way. So yeah, it's really so go see what Jen did for my website. It's
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it's such a magical thing that we created together. And presumably people can join your newsletter, and if they don't want to join anything right away, they can join your newsletter.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, I do. In fact, if you join tonight, there will be a channeled message. I do a channeled message from the dragons on the first of each month.
Lovely.
And yeah, so you could get that.
Um, am I right by saying the foundation course is certified? It's a certified
Yes.
course? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Certified. It was important to me to do that because having dabbled in many different modalities and seen what I liked, it was important to me that this felt not like just a kind of flash in the pan experience, but that it was it's 7 weeks, it's all online, but we have a lot of live calls and support because I feel that the best trainings that we do are a healing journey for ourselves as well. And we need support in that. I've done courses where I go for a weekend and then you're straight back into life and you're like, oh my God, what happened? you
Yeah.
know. So it was important to me to do it in a very supportive way. And then it's also certified by the IICT. So anyone that goes on to the practitioner level can be certified with them too.
Amazing. And become your own dragon energy practitioner. Divine dragon energy. Is that right?
Yes, divine dragon energy. Yeah.
Well, unless someone wants to pop any questions in, we have covered everything that I wished to cover today. It's been absolute pleasure to chat in more depth.
Thank you
Um,
so much. It's been so much fun. Thank you.
yeah,
And thank you to everyone who's here, everyone who watches. Thank you.
yeah. So you can find Aiden's website at www.aodaoinhathaway.com. Probably you could also Google Dances with Dragons and it would come up as well.
Yes, yeah.
Enjoyed this very much. So, yeah, thank you so much for those who come. And this recording will be up very shortly on YouTube. And I will email out to everyone who was here the link to the YouTube. But obviously, if you follow Aiden already, or if you follow me, you'll likely see it on our social medias or newsletters as well. So, one way or another, you can find this information. Well, thank you so much, guys, and we'll let you all
You
go.